Okay, so here we are. We are going to now start looking at some of the how this whole program works. So I'm in the classes, and I'm going to go down here and look through some of the other projects that we've built. And we're running a lot of different functionality in Salesforce. Basically, we have full-blown Java with a few caveats. It's kind of modified Java, but it has much of the functionality and features of Java, and they call it Apex, but really it's Java. And also, they have full SQL Server. They call it SOQL instead of SQL. and But for all intents and purposes, it is SQL Server. It's 99% SQL Server, not 100%, but it's 99%, and it's 99% Java. Um, okay, so the whole thing runs off of the main routine, and I'm clicking this, and it's supposed to show up. There it is. Okay. So what I did here was basically I identified a bunch of global variables, and I also got instances of a bunch of the various objects that I'm going to use that are needed for this. Now, some of you are going to complain that my architecture is not as elegant as possibly it could be, and it's well taken. It's true. Much of this was done simply because I had no choice. In the middle of development, WordPress ran into a bug where it could not handle more than 500 lines of code, which is a crippling limitation for a sophisticated project. They've promised the old implementation did not have that bug. You could go as long as you wanted, and in one day in a new rev. Suddenly we couldn't go beyond 500 lines. So what I've had to do was I basically had to rip my program apart and put it into about eight or 10 different modules, each of which does part of the job, and those modules all get the job done collectively. And there's probably more like 2,000 or 3,000 lines of code. And by chunking it up like that, I was able to live under their limits. You're going to see a lot of that where I had to do some fairly inelegant things to sidestep a lot of the constraints and rules and things that Salesforce imposes upon a developer. Okay, so we're done identifying all of our variables, so we're good to go. So here we go, and we do our kickoff strings here. Now, I have to explain this a little bit. When this routine runs, I accept certain switches so that the user can use this in varying modes. And the best way for us to talk about this is to sort of stop this conversation and go show you one more feature. One of the things that is nice about the developer console is if you go up here, I hope you can hang on a minute. If you go up here to execute, I hope you can see my cursor moving around. It's right up here. If you click in here, it exposes a thing, this little run box. And this run box is super cool and super powerful. This allows you to actually kick off your routine and make it run directly. This is how you make things go. Now, so we're going to look at how we kick this off. Now, the routine that I'm showing you back here was called sysimport main. Okay, so what we do is we get I think sort of let me find a good one for you. Okay, this is sort of the way that it's supposed to run, the way it's supposed to look. So what we have here is we have sysimport main, and then we have the instance name is a new instance of sysimport main. Okay, so now we've spun up an object called sysimport main. Now we take sysimport main sysimport paid, and using that newly created object in memory, we're going to invoke the execute method. However, we're going to pass in varying ways that this can work. The first one is a possible called paid. Now, this program, there are three separate CSV files that can be imported off of the California server into the Florida server. One kind is the paid kind, for students that have paid, and that's one file. The second one is people who have applied to our programs, and that has a whole different group of information. So the program can run in applied mode, or it can run in the registered mode for students who have merely registered. So this thing is really it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife in that it can do three different things depending on what you tell it you want it to do. And we'll look at how it interprets all this stuff. So this could be paid, or it could be applied, or whatever. Okay, so let's leave it applied. And then secondarily, you have the option to run it in test mode, where it will use internal data and not go out to the outside, not go out to the California server to get data, but instead will pull it from internal data, because I gave it 3 or 4 lines of code that it could have that will leave it self-contained, so it doesn't have to go to California. And sometimes that's advantageous for testing. And then the next one is another parameter that that allows you basically to rerun data over and over again. The system doesn't like to, once it imports someone, it doesn't do it again. This basically allows you to re-import people. And then the final one actually enables you to, the user, to specify like a past date. So suppose it hasn't run for 3 days. This would allow people to, normally it runs today's date. It runs, whatever today's date is, it calculates it and pulls it in if you leave it blank. However, let's see, as we can see here, this guy is going to pull in registered people. It's not in test mode, it's in run, so it's actually going to go to California and go get the data. Ignore this one for the moment, we'll come back to this. And here is the name of the actual CSV that we want it to go get, which might be a week ago, it might be a month ago, who knows, who cares. I just wanted to give the users the ability to force it to go back and get a prior date, and that's how you do it. But if it's empty, it just gets, it'll self-calculate the current day's date.